Hi, this is Michael Becker, and in this Tinderbox lesson, we're going to talk about a really fundamental computer capability. It's called regular expression. Regular expression is a pattern matching language that was developed by an American mathematician in the 1950s named Stephen Cole Kleene. And what it does is it allows you to run pattern matching within the computer to find and replace text or transform text using a series of characters. And we're going to use this regular expression capability within a variety of Tinderbox functions to be able to find and replace and transform our content and to be able to populate attributes. So let me show you how that works. So here I have a Tinderbox file, and let me give you a bit of a background and an introduction. First and foremost, I want to thank Roger Alexander and Mark Anderson, who have been fundamental in helping me understand, command line, regex, and these capabilities that we're talking about today. And then always Paul Walters and Mark Bernstein and the rest of the Tinderbox community. A huge thank you to all of you as well. Now here's the background of what I want to accomplish and do. So I do a lot of meetings and I take a lot of notes in my Tinderbox files. And particularly when I'm running and using my computer, what I'll often do is I'll drag over, and I'll show you this right now. I will drag over from my calendar. Let me go find it. Calendar items. So for example, let's say I'm in my calendar and I've got to pull it over right now. Let's say I'm in my calendar and I drag over an ICS file into my calendar. You'll see what it does is it pulls in the calendar item and will populate the start date and end date from those items, but it doesn't pull in the actual names of the people that I will be having a meeting with. And so then what I found is I've needed to copy and paste those names into text. And so I could easily manually copy each email address and each name and populate that into my user-generated attributes. Do that once, that's fine. Do that multiple times, that becomes quite a pain, and you want to then automatically use your Tinderbox action code to be able to populate those attributes for you. And that's what I've learned how to do using regular expression. So again, my objective then was to pull those pieces of content, those names and those email addresses out of text and get it populated into a variety of user-generated attributes. And so with that in mind, let me show you how I went about doing that. So first and foremost, the problem that I had, again, just to reemphasize the problem, is when I pull that event into my Tinderbox file, it doesn't actually populate the names. And so my solution then was to generate a couple of user-generated attributes, leverage the import functionality that's already embedded within Tinderbox, create some stamps, create some using both .replace as well as lookup capabilities. Use the Mac calendar, and then of course use regular expression. Now let's dig in and let me show you regular expression in a little bit. So according to Wikipedia, regular expression is a sequence of characters that define a search pattern. And then this search pattern is used for finding stuff or find and replace and or for transforming material. Now let me show you what some of those characters look like. So I've gone over to the Mozilla developer website here, and you'll see when we refer to a sequence of characters, what they're referring to is things like the period, which is used to match any single character, or say a forward D or a forward W or a forward UHH. So essentially what you can do is you can string a number of characters together, and those characters form search patterns. So for example, here's another example. If you were to do an X and then a question mark equals Y, that will then help you be able to form a series of pattern. That pattern matching will then help us be able to go match a certain amount of certain text. So let me show you, for example, if we were to use that model. For instance, using regex, I've just pulled up my BB edit text editor and I've pasted in a series of emails here. And then using my BB editor, I'm going to open up Playground, and we're going to start searching on this text. So for example, let's say I wanted to find the text that, the name Roger that was before the word AL within my text. So to pattern match that, what I do is I type the word Roger, and let's imagine I had like 1,000 pieces of text in there and I couldn't find it. So I do Roger, and then I say question mark equals, and then another parentheses space LE, and you'll see that we pattern match, so only the Roger is selected there. And then now that we've selected that within our application, we then can use that selection and say populate an attribute or field. In my case, as I noted, I want to find the email, and I want to find the first name. And so to be able to do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my regex. So I'm going to use my less than. So that's the first character here. So I'm telling the regex to go find that first character, and then I say period. And what the period is for is essentially to match any character. And so let me go ahead and define that again. So when we say period, what that means is we're telling Tinderbox to go match any particular character, and I'm going to get the thing, match any character. And then if I'm using then I didn't type period, I typed a greater than sign, period. And then if I type the asterisk sign, what that then saying is match 0 or more times. So match any character 0 or more times. Now, if I only wanted to get 3 characters, I could use the little curly brackets as an operator, and I could say this. And so what that's saying is go find the less than sign in my text, then match any character, but only get the next 3 characters. And if I wanted to say then only get the next 6 characters, and then if I wanted to then just say go get all of the characters, then I could do that. And so that's what regex is it's using this series of characters to be and symbols and construct to be able to match text. And so what I'm going to do now in Tinderbox then is essentially I'm going to tell Tinderbox to go and perform those matches. And so as I just mentioned, the less than sign means the start of this you'll go find this character. The period means find any character, and the asterisk means find any symbol or number that matches. That is 0 or multiple times. Let me go ahead and fix that. Actually, means it's specifically it's match 0 or more times. Okay, so that's what those mean. And so now what I want to be able to do, so when I say less than dot asterisk, what I'm saying is go get all the characters that after the asterisk to the end of the line. Essentially what I'm saying. So now let me show you how we're going to do that in a particular method. Now I'm going to use what's called the dot replace method for doing this within Tinderbox. And so I have developed a stamp to be able to demonstrate that to you. So if I go open up this, you'll see actually I have a stamp in Tinderbox that will help us do that. But let me explain what's happening within this stamp and how that works. So the text dot replace method, essentially what that's saying is I'm telling Tinderbox. Now remember, when you're using action code, you're essentially saying everything to the right of the equals up into the semicolon. What I'm saying is whatever the value of that expression is, apply it to the attribute on the left side of the expression. So what I'm saying, whatever this expression returns, apply it to the left side of the expression. And then same thing here, whatever this value returns, apply it to the left side of the expression. So let me explain then what dot replace does as a dot operator within Tinderbox. So the dot operator within Tinderbox essentially says, go grab that text and replace it with something. So when we say this, what we're saying is we're telling Tinderbox, go grab the text of the current note and then replace it. And what are we going to replace it with? We're going to go find essentially the email address, and then we're going to replace it with a semicolon. And so that allows me to build a list. But here's the counterintuitive thing. To be able to get names, what I'm doing is go find the email addresses and replace them with a semicolon. So what that means is then all I'm left with is the names. And then similarly, when I go say, go get me all the emails now, I want you to go into the text, go get me all the emails. But this time, what I want you to do is use the regex dot star and then the less than sign. And again, let's go back to our playground here so you can see what that looks like. So if I'm going to go then do the opposite, I'm going to say dot star and then the less than sign. What it's doing is it's matching all of the text before the less than sign. That's the pattern match. And so in Tinderbox, then I'm going to use the dot replace, which down here is going to say, go find all of the text before the less than sign and then replace that with the semicolon. So that is how that works. And then what I want you to be able to do is at the end, I have a second dot replace in this one because I'm now also wanting you to remove the extra the extra greater than sign that we have in the text. So that's what this regular expression is doing. And so again, essentially what we're doing is we're asking Tinderbox, go into the text, find this pattern, and then replace that pattern with a semicolon or remove it completely, and then stick it into my attributes. That's the goal. And so I've developed an exercise for you to be able to look at that. So for example, I have two exercises. A simple text is an example of a simplified set of raw meeting notes. And then another example, 1.2, that looks at this as well. But in this example, though, there is some extra text in the note, and that's the difference between these two examples. So let me go ahead and show you in preview then here. So you'll see here that I've got email, and I want to populate these fields with the email addresses and the names as a semicolon separated list. And then in this example here, what you're seeing is there's some text in the fields. And so I'll be able to explain that to you in just a minute. So let me go ahead and pull my stamp over and watch what happens. So if I go ahead and I apply this stamp, as I just explained it, we're doing the dot replace to be able to populate the names and the dot replace to be able to populate the emails. When I apply that, magically, Tinderbox goes in, pulls out, it looks at every line in the text, parses the text as defined by dot replace, and populates the emails. So now watch here. If I go ahead and delete just the email one, and we do that again, you'll see it's just going to populate the names. And then if I put that back in, right, and run it again, and now we get everything. So that is a great way of using this dot replace capability within Tinderbox and this concept of regular expression that says go in and find that particular piece of content. And by the way, speaking of find, while I'm at it, so I'm going to copy this right here. One thing I didn't show you is this. If you this regular expression concept, not only does it apply in action code, I can actually type it here. So if I say go find me the less than sign and any text that follows it and matches any number of words, and I can hit enter, Tinderbox will go find all of the text in my notes that have that less than sign and following it. Likewise, if using the same example before, if I then do the, and return back the 3 characters, it will find the 3 characters that follow that less than sign. So again, so we can use regular expression in search within Tinderbox too, which is pretty interesting. Now, here's an example, and this is a challenge why in this example, dot replace doesn't work as effectively. So if I go ahead and now apply my dot replace code here, in this example, though, you're seeing that there's some text. So if I apply that here, what's happening is it's going through and it's finding all of the extra text. So if I go and copy that right now, you see that it found not only the names, but it also found all of this extra text that was there as well. And so that is problematic for what I'm trying to accomplish in my demonstration. So while the dot replace functionality kind of works in certain situations, if I've already started to taking notes and such like that, it doesn't. Which then leads me to the next method that I wanted to share with you. The next method is using dot replace with the lookup. And what this approach allows me to do is to kind of develop a database that I then can start looking up names and leveraging within my Tinderbox file. So if I go here, and again, similarly as I showed you before, I've got a couple of examples. And this time what we're going to do is we're going to use a new attribute, what I'm going to call attendee lookup. And we're going to, again, use the same concept of pulling and leveraging regex, but this time I'm going to use a slightly different regex that will allow us to be able to pull information from the notes. So essentially what I'm saying, let's go ahead and copy this and we'll take a look at it in the playground just to see, you can see it in operation before we run it. Go here. And now this time we're going to put this regex. You'll see that it's copying only that text. And if I go ahead and grab the full one again, let me show you here. If I now say this and I put the greater than sign, what it's going to do is it's going to say copy all of the text in between those two symbols and then replace that. And then what we're saying, then same thing with the email address, and then say go do an attended lookup, and then replace and create a line break between those names. And so that's essentially, and that's what this little n n means. Basically, remove the line breaks is what that n is saying. So and then we can go from there. So now if I go ahead and apply this to our examples. So let's go back here and I'll show you here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do our lookup method 2. And this time I'm creating a lookup field. So I'm using the exact same concepts. So attendee lookup equals text.replace, slightly different regex. And this time what I'm saying is what I want you to do is effectively go ahead and create a lookup table for me. So go ahead and remove, as we just demonstrated to you, the greater sign and less than sign, stick a colon in the between the name and the email address, and that effectively creates a lookup list that I can later use within my Tinderbox file. And then I want you to also populate all of those names with a lookup name. And again, we're going to use our regex to then create a set by pulling all the text and then sticking a semicolon in between those. So I'm going to again get rid of the email addresses and simply create a name. So let me go ahead now and hit apply. And you'll see we've parsed all of the text in the text field. We've now created a lookup essentially attribute that gives me the name, the email address, and then we've created a list of names. So by doing that, what that allows me to do is I then can come here and say, let's say I wanted to now go and look up the name. So we're going to go ahead and parse that again. And you'll see same problem that I showed you before. If there is text in the emails, that won't work as well. So you've got to be careful when there's text in the emails. This parsing methodology won't work. I'll show you a way to fix that in just a minute. Now here's where the lookup function comes into play. So remember in this first one over here, in this one right here, we created what's called a lookup table within Tinderbox. And what a lookup table basically does is it says, here is the value we're looking up, and then what you want to return. So if I type in Mark Anderson, I want you to give me back the email address. If I type in Mark Bernstein, I want you to give me back that email address. That's what a lookup table does within Tinderbox. So if I come here now, and so let's say I want to delete the word Mark Anderson and hit enter. So it's fully deleted. And this time I want to go type in the word Mark Bernstein. Okay. And you'll see it comes back and returns the email that's associated with Mark Bernstein. If I go ahead and uncheck Mark and put in Paul, it will then return the email address that is for Paul. So when I'm doing this method, not only am I learning to parse the text and get my attributes populated, I'm also learning how to build lookup tables. Then I can then use the values from those attributes to do other things within my files, which I think is particularly interesting. Now, remember, we ran into a problem a couple of times. This worked great. This dot replace method worked great, and this lookup method worked great when we only had text in here and no additional notes. When we had additional notes, that became problematic. And so then this is where this other concept within Tinderbox comes in play, which is the command line. And the command line approach allows us to step through every line within a Tinderbox file, but this time we're going to use the command line functionality of the operating system of the computer. And particularly, we're going to use two programming commands called grep and awk. And essentially, in order for this to work, you've got to be running the command line functions on your computer. This program called Homebrew is the most effective methods for being able to do that, as well as you need to make sure that you've got the awk and the grep command lines installed. We can have a different lesson to show you how to do that, but I first want to intrigue you by demonstrating to you how this works. So the first kind of command line we're going to run is we're gonna tell Tinderbox, and remember what a command line does is it basically calls a function at the OS level of your computer, goes basically out of Tinderbox, pulls the commands out of of your computer to help you do it. Now that I think about it, let me show you this site that Mark Anderson helped me assess. I'm gonna pull up a browser here and show you a great site that's super helpful. So here's a really useful site to help you understand the available command lines that are possible on your computer. So in this case, we're saying grep, right? So let's go find the command line grep. Okay, so what the command line grep says is it essentially lets you go out and get and match patterns. So you're going to basically go and pull, in this case, the needle out of the haystack. You're going to go and pull content out of your text, and you're going to be using the command line functions to be able to do that. And so a site called SS64 will help you understand the command line capabilities of your Mac. Now, what we're saying here in this command line is we're saying, hey, Tinderbox, remember, everything on the right side that happens on the right side of the equation gets applied to the left side. So we're telling Tinderbox, go run a command line on the text of this note, and essentially run an awk, run this regex, and then I don't fully understand all of this. This is where I get help from the community when I'm doing this, but I found it incredibly interesting and wanted to share it with you, where you essentially then say, go grab the first line, process that line, and then populate the attribute with the name. And then similarly, you're doing the same function, but this time, rather than using the case where we're using the awk function here, we're using the grep function. And essentially, we're giving it some text and saying, go out and grab that text and then populate the functions. And so let me show you the exercise here to do that. So this time you'll see we actually have some text that are wrapped around this, and really, again, all we want of those from this result is to get the email addresses and the names populating in this. So now, if I go and show you the parse names method, I can go ahead. Essentially, I'm running this command line, so I'm going down underneath the Tinderbox into the command line layer of the computer, saying, will you go process my text file using this command and populate the attribute of names? And now watch what happens. When I apply this, the names get populated, and I get the comma separated or semicolon separated list as I had requested. And when I do the same thing for emails, I get the that list as well. So that gives you another example of a great example of how that is done. And then again, you can combine those methods together. So the way to combine methods within a Tinderbox file is you can run essentially two actions expressions separated by the semicolon. So you're telling Tinderbox, first run this, semicolon, full stop, and then run that. And so now if I apply both the stamp, you'll see it populates both at the same time. And unlike running the .replace and .lookup functions that we showed you before, what the grep and awk command line functions allow you more granular control over the text to be able to only get this text and ignore the rest. So that's essentially what that parsing methodology is allowing us to do. Now, there's some other kind of fun tips and tricks that I put in here, where I teach you how to do some spell checking of notes and names. So another kind of cool tip or trick using action code within Tinderbox is, if you wanted to be able to really not just name, but spell check any variable within Tinderbox or attribute within Tinderbox, all you need to do is pull the values of those notes out of Tinderbox and populate the text of a note. So for example, if you look here, what I'm basically saying is take the text, grab the action code values, grab all of the names, and then format it. And here's another example of regex. And this is one of the reasons why I wanted to bring it up. This time we're going to use regex as a command to say create a line break for me. And that's what the /n means in regex, create a line break. And so when I apply that stamp, what we're doing is we're telling Tinderbox, go out throughout the entire file, grab all of the names of every note, and populate it into text. And so we've got all the names in every note, and you'll see here that we've got a couple spelling errors. So I've got that one, which we can fix. And I can go up here and fix that one. And then you'll notice that we had that one there that was intentionally fixed as well. And so now, if I go ahead now and redo it and apply the command line, you'll scroll down and see that that is no longer misspelled, and we've left that one as intentional misspelling. So that way you can, this is a nice way of being able to spell check your attributes. And again, if you want to spell check a different attribute, all you need to do is change this from name to the name of whatever other attribute you want to be able returning your values from. So that's the way to be able to leverage and do that. And then in this training as well, I encourage you to go ahead and check out a bunch of other learnings that I have, like how to leverage and use stamps. I gave you some recommendations on how to handle images. So for example, what I do, and I've shown this in other lessons, but essentially I have a variable called media file name and the path for the image I'm putting into the file. So that's how I go ahead and get these images into my files, by using path names and embedded export code into my files. So I'm going to explain that in a little bit more detail within the file. I also explain, we remember earlier in the presentation I talked about Brew. This is, you can use Brew, the Homebrew application to be able to learn how to engage and interact and do command line coding on your computer. So that is another great service for you to be able to take a look at. I learned a ton of other stuff in doing this lesson and kind of preparing it. So I've given you some notes there and a variety of other tips and tricks that you can, and supporting materials that you can look at as well. So for example, we referred to this concept of awk, and so that's a sequence of, or the concept of I've got that on the line. The concept of grep, which is a command line utility for searching plain text data sets for lines that match a regular expression. So that's, again, these are command line codes that leverage the functionality that we were just talking about. And then I've provided you a whole list of other resources that are available that you'll be able to use within this training. So that's it. It's again, it's a really powerful capability within Tinderbox to be able to leverage this concept called regular expression to parse and tease out a variety of other elements within your Tinderbox file. Now, again, I can't teach you everything about regular expression. Really, the goal of this lesson was to show you at a very high level the concept, give you some examples of how it works, and then we can experiment on future lessons down the road as we dig into detail. So thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed this. Please like the lesson and subscribe to my channel. Appreciate it. Bye-bye.